Welcome. I'm Dr. Carrie Jackson, and I'm so very glad you are here with us as we talk about taking back what you were told you couldn't have, or claiming it, however you want to frame it. But I'm just so glad you're here. It is my delight to welcome you to this first in our series of conversations with the wonderful folks at Excellent Way. You're going to meet the team that we have very soon. They're people I call the love team because we initially came together as we were facilitating the Love Like You've Never Been Hurt retreat that we did virtually in spring of 2023. But we're going to do it in person, in real space, in fall of 2023. Maybe you'll learn more about that. But you will meet the love team, and I call them that because they are such amazing people. They are vessels of love and light. And when you hear each of our stories today, I think you'll understand more why I call them the love team. So I want to tell you a little about Excellent Way. Excellent Way provides a range of services for personal growth and development. And we do that by integrating spiritual traditions and wisdoms and rituals with emotional healing strategies. We call it providing pathways to your wholeness. We use a variety of things that are available to people across the board, people from different spiritual backgrounds and from none. For years, people have wondered how it is that I work with people who identify as atheists. When people understand there is a spiritual core to their own being, it does not have to be deistically oriented. And how we work with people from so many different traditions and incorporate that into this excellent way, which is a path of love. And now I'm going to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Reverend Carson Hawks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carson Hawks, and I am the Director of Programs and Community Care for Excellent Way, and also a retreat and a workshop facilitator. And I love Excellent Way. We do all kinds of programming and things. Sean, if you'll click the next one, please. So Excellent Way offers spiritual coaching, organizational consulting, retreats and workshops. And our current programs that we have running now or starting soon, beginning in the fall, is a Love Like You've Never Been Hurt retreat that will be the end of September in person in Phoenix, Arizona. And we also do intentional grieving empowerment workshop series. And we are in the process of doing that now. The next one will start in October. And also Taking Back My Life, which is a program for empowerment and taking back my life for those who have survived sexual abuse and trauma. And so just wanted to give you an idea of some of the things that we do. And now we want to introduce the love team. So not that Carrie and I are not part of the love team, we are, but let the rest of the team introduce themselves a little. Zori?
Hi, so my name is Zoraida Saldaña, short Zori. That's the way people call me. I'm an interfaith minister. I'm a counselor, spiritual counselor. I've been a counselor all my life. I have worked with youth, adults and families through all their traumas and pains and journeyed with them through their healing. And all I have to say is that, I really am extremely happy to be part of the love team at Excellent Way. So that's who I am, Zori.
Thank you, Zori. So Dax is also on the love team, and Dax is not with us tonight, but he is a beautiful, wonderful, amazing human being. And if you participate or come and join us in the rest of the series, we're going to do one panel a month. And so if you join us in any of those other panels, Dax will be here with us as well, and you will get to know his loveliness.
Hello, I am Tijay Beulah Howard. I'm a spiritual companion, historian, professor, and writer. And I am grateful to be partnered with the Love Team to do the work of helping people to live more joyful and authentic lives. And grateful to be with you tonight.
Thank you, Tijay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Snavely. I'm part of the Love Team as a retreat facilitator, and I also am running all of our tech stuff this evening. I have been involved in community building and advocacy work for a very, very long time, longer than I would like to admit. I have worked primarily with education as a tool for advocacy. And I work in the nonprofit setting now. And however, was raised in churches, and I went to seminary, and I have a background in seminary education. And I also worked in churches up until I switched and went into the nonprofit world. And I will pass it back to Carson to kick us off for the evening.
Thank you, Sean. So our topic this evening, one of the reasons we chose our topic for this evening is one, because it's Pride Month, and the story that starts it out has to do with pride and Pride Month. So our topic tonight is getting back what you were told you would never have. And so when I was in seminary, I took a class called Refuge in the City, that part of what we did was go and visit the City of Refuge Church in Oakland, California. And we spent several days there talking with folks who were leaderships of programs and whatnot, just to see what they did and all the services they have and offer for the community. And so part of like a whole day we spent with the Transcendence Choir, which is a choir that is made up of transgender folks. And so we spent the day hearing their stories. And what many of them were talking about was getting back what they were told they could never have. And getting back what they told they could never have for them was the love of God. They were told that God didn't love them. They were told that they weren't welcome in churches. They were told that they couldn't sing. They were told that they couldn't sing in church. And they were told that they could not be who they were in the world, and especially in churches. And so what they were talking about getting back was their ability to sing in church, the opportunity to sing across the community and across the US, and their love for God and knowing that God loved them as well. And so part of what we had to do as an assignment for that particular few days of all that we learned in this place called City of Refuge was to do a reflection. And so I want to share my reflection with you today to give you an idea of kind of what we're talking about when we're saying getting back what you were told you couldn't have. It's especially a topic that I think touches the heart of the LGBTQ community, but it also is a topic that transcends. It's not just, it's universal. People have been told they couldn't do things, whether they're part of the LGBTQ community or not. And so we think this topic resonates with everyone. But this is my reflection. How exactly do you get back what you were told you could never have when you may have never had it in the first place? How do you get back what you were told you would never have when the trauma held in your body is so loud that you can't find or hear your own voice, much less the still small voice of God? How do you get back what you were told you would never have when you can't seem to unlearn the God of your father or the God of your youth? When you wonder if you'll ever be able to grow into feeling capable, no matter how hard you try or how hard you pray? How do you get back what you were told you would never have when the God of your own understanding seems to default in your body and the ways you move in the world to the God of your father or the God of your youth? Maybe for me, it isn't about getting anything back, but learning to claim for myself the God of my own understanding and love of God and love for God. Maybe I just have to be patient to claim that I am growing into feeling capable even when I don't feel capable. I have observed many folks this week living in the love of God, truly living in the Spirit of God, where their love of God and from God overflows to everyone around them. So maybe, just maybe, if it's possible for them, then it's also possible for me. So we're going to talk this evening. Each of us are going to share a little bit of our stories about something that we have gotten back that we were told we couldn't have. And so since I'm talking already, I'll start. So what I have gotten back that I was told I would never have is the love of God. I was told from countless places, society, family, churches, everyone around me, that God didn't love me and that God didn't give a rat's ass about me. And so I spent 3 decades of my life living from that space. And then I wound up in seminary. And people ask me all the time, like, how do you get from thinking God doesn't care about you and believing that lie and not realizing it was a lie? How do you get from there to seminary? I still don't know how to answer that question other than it was a God thing. Like, it just showed up literally in my lap, and everything, like so many things, had to fall together like dominoes just going across like that for it to happen for me, that there was no other explanation but that it was God moving in my life. And so what I have gotten back that I was told I would never have is the love of God and relationship with God. When I was in seminary, it just happened to be such a safe and loving environment for me that all my walls came crashing down around me, which is a really good thing. The walls that you have built up are gone now, but learning how to maneuver the world without those walls, not such an easy thing. All the trauma and religious trauma then has a room to come up and just play havoc with you and your body and your mind and your heart and your soul. But it was a place where I could ask questions. Asking questions was like huge for me because I was taught that I was not allowed to ask questions. Wasn't allowed to ask questions of parents, wasn't allowed to ask questions from teachers or anybody, really, that it was you were disrespecting authority if you were asking questions. And so that was stifled so much in my life that I got to a point where I didn't really have any questions, because I had just stifled it so much. It was buried so deep down in me that I just didn't have the questions. And so in seminary, it was just a place where I was encouraged to ask questions. I was encouraged to share what I was thinking or feeling at the time, in a space where people were loving, people could hold space for that, and people could affirm and be kind and compassionate about whatever those things were. There wasn't like violence and yelling and all of this stuff coming at me when I was opening up to share myself and my feelings and my questions. Most importantly, I had read this book by Joan Chittister called Called to Question, and it was like, oh, what if it's that simple? Like, God is calling me to question, right? And so, yeah, in the midst of seminary, which generally takes people 3 years, and it took me 6, it takes as long as it's supposed to take till you get what you're supposed to get, right? And so I had the opportunity to be in that safe space for the healing of all that trauma and religious trauma, and to get back a relationship with God, and a relationship that I know that God loves me. I still have to struggle with being able to really feel that and operate from that in my being still, but I have gotten back that relationship, and understanding that God does love me and does care about what happens to me and is doing this life with me, as opposed to me trying to do everything on my own and under my own steam. And so that is what I have gotten back, that I was told I would never have, that God would never love me, that I would just go to hell, and that would be that, so that's my story. And now I'm going to pass it to Carrie for her to share her story.
I was in my room one night, and there was a party happening, in my dorm room. I could hear folks just, having a whatever music we were listening to back in the 1970s, and gonna have a funky good time. I don't know if that's the song, but anyway, it was something of that genre. And while I was there in pain and listening to others having a really great time, Spirit spoke to me and said, I want you to preach. And I knew it was God. It was not a question for me. Did I make this up? Am I tripping? None of those things happened. It was absolutely clear for me that this was Spirit speaking to me. So I said, they're not going to let me do that. It was so apparent to me that religious people were not going to allow me to use a gift, even if God called me to share the gift. And I didn't understand it then, that I was saying to God that the voice of these people was more important to me. But the socialization was so deep till I could not imagine that if God calls me to something, that God would make the way. I couldn't even get that. All I knew was they're not going to let me because I'm gay. I didn't even think about the woman part. It was just because I'm gay. And it took me 16 years before I finally said yes to God, to God's invitation to my life. And I want to be clear, it wasn't just, 16 years through the tulips. Every now and then God would hound me. Sometimes I had strangers come to me and say, I think God's called you to something special in your life. And I sometimes lied and said, I don't know nothing about that. Other times I did speak the truth and say, well, I'm not ready. Most of the time I lied and said, I don't know anything about that. And it took those years, those decades, for me to get it that there was nothing in my life that Spirit has for me that anyone on this plane can withhold from me. It took me a decade and a half to get that. And the socialization runs so deep within most of us when we've received the messages since we were very, very young about what we would have access to and have the right to and be able to do, and with whom we would be able to associate, and on and on and on and on. And that particular, I'll call it a nut. It was such a hard nut that had to be cracked within me. And it wasn't until I was able to crack that nut, allow Spirit to smash it, however it happened, it wasn't until then that all of the other socialized messages about what I could do and who I could be, that those were able to be addressed as well. But it started with the ability to respond yes to something that was right and whole for my life. And I remember the first time I preached, I said, is this what I was running away from all these years? I felt more authentically, freely, and wholly me. And to this day, every time I speak with a God message, there's a wholeness I can't even describe. And it was the socialization that was keeping me from that. That's me.
Thank you, Carrie. Who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Zori?
So for me, there was not one particular person who told me that I would not have a voice. It was compound trauma. When I was a child, I was a very curious child, and it started from very young. I was about 5 years old, and I was very curious. I didn't like going to sleep early, and so if I would hear any noise, I would go walking around trying to figure out who's there, what's going on. And I remember going into this room, and I noticed my father was there, and my father was there with another sibling. And as soon as I saw him, I saw his face, and he went. And that's where it started. It started with my father. And as a child, receiving a message from a parent telling you to be quiet is a very powerful message, and it stuck with me for a very long time. And as I started getting older, I started experiencing more trauma in my life. But that message and the trauma of the experiences of the trauma itself was shutting me down. It quieted me. My father said, I don't have not to say a word, so I'm not gonna speak up. And as I started getting older and experiencing more trauma and developing relationship, I started noticing that I didn't have a voice. The only thing I had was my experiences of trauma. And my voice was deep in there somewhere, but I couldn't hear it. And I started noticing that it was affecting my life. It was affecting my relationships. I couldn't communicate my feelings, couldn't say how I felt, couldn't, tell people what my values were, what my opinions and who I was and what I was as a person, individual. And I just felt like unseen in the world. And that had to change because it felt like I was in a cage and I couldn't live and continue on with my life not having healthy relationships. So I started seeking to heal myself. I started seeking healing modalities, started wanting to dig in and started meditating and just wanting to find out who is Zori? What is her voice? So even though it started with my father, it was all these experiences of trauma that told me, you're not gonna have your voice anymore. But then there was a day that I got up and I said to myself, I have to dig deep inside and I have to hear my voice. What is my voice? What do I sound like? How do I feel? And I needed to dig in deep. I had to go through the pain in order to find my voice. Because people have been telling me that I don't have a voice. And without my voice, I didn't have an identity. So I just kept moving and I was determined. I was really determined to find my voice. There's many people living out today, living out in the world without really connecting with their voice, living their lives, with other people's opinions and voices and sounds. And, I wanted to discover those things for myself. I even started developing careers that was more for other people than myself. It's a terrible feeling. But I have to tell you something. Lately, I have been vibing so high that my aura has become a magnet to blessings. Because that's what I want me and my spirit and my aura to be to other people. But most importantly, to myself first before anyone else. I love people and I love to journey with them, but I have to be able to journey with myself. And I am so happy that I found my voice. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I have discovered my full voice, but I have discovered my voice. And my full voice is still in transition and still in journey. And I look forward to that discovery, that continued discovery for me, because that has been my journey in this world, in my life, was to say, I'm taking back my voice. Because if I don't connect with myself, I can't love myself. I can't provide myself with self-compassion. I can't love other people. It's just those, that's how it affects you. And I mean, that's how it affected me. So when my father shut me down and my mother wanted me to live a life that she wanted me to live, and the compound trauma continued to shut me down, one day I just said, that's not how it's going to happen. If I'm going to live in this world, I am going to find out what my voice sounds like. So every day I'm walking around like, woo, woo, just singing along, woo, even if I don't have a song, to my dog or to whoever wants to listen, I listen because it's a continued work in my journey. So that's what I want to share.
Thank you, Zori.
Welcome.
Tijay or Sean?
Sean, I'll go so that you can keep decompressing from the tech responsibilities. One affirmation that I've developed is says that you are worthy of your own good love. And I had to develop that affirmation because when I was about 13 or 14 years old, I remember watching my younger sisters, and Sesame Street was on, and Ellen DeGeneres was on Sesame Street. And I don't know where he came from, but my father appeared and had this very violent reaction to Ellen DeGeneres being on Sesame Street. A lot of screaming. The one phrase that I remember was, "Get her out of there, get her out of here," as if Ellen was right there in the room with us. And little young me knew in that moment that I could never come out of the closet because I would not be well received. And so I went through my teenage years being very afraid to think about what my romantic future would be. I was someone who, they talked to me, my parents, my grandparents, they all talked to me very early about sex and sexuality, largely because I think they were preparing me to be the first person in our family to graduate high school without a child or an abortion. And I just kind of walked around, one, knowing that, I thought both girls and boys were cute. And two, I better not ever think about having sex ever in life, because I was going to go straight to hell. I found my 18-year-old self madly in love with a woman who way too old to be, I think, also in love with me. And I spent my entire undergraduate career in this really warped, secretive romance. And when it started to fall apart, when it got too big for me, because I was dealing with this all on my little self, my young adult self, decided that it was too much and that I needed to repent. I needed to confess my sins. And I thought that I had carried this secret that no one knew, that, this person and I were not actually best friends. We were actually in a relationship. I was surprised because one, everyone seemed to know that we were in this relationship, and everyone affirmed that I needed to come out of the sin of homosexuality, and that if I could just get right with Jesus, then, the rest of my life would be perfect. And so for a decade or so, I lived this life of trying to, never went to a conversion therapy situation, but really found myself in sexual wholeness programming, if you will, and really just disconnected from who I felt myself to be. I felt like I would never be whole unless I found a man to marry and have children. And I don't quite remember the shift, but I do remember meeting after a decade or so of just kind of like practicing celibacy, because who wants to go to hell? So I felt like celibacy would be a good route. But something happened in my 30s where I just felt alive to my own body, my own heart. I felt that when I was ready to receive love, not only my own self-love, and realizing that being able to distinguish between those core childhood memories and distinguish them from the actual love of God, and to begin to experience my own self-love and experiencing my own love for me. And a lot of that I do credit to the teachings of Howard Thurman, in terms of realizing that I am a child of God, and I'm not the things that people call me or think about me. But that in the sight of God, I'm okay. And the more okay I started to become with myself, I found the more open I was to dating again. And I found myself at a particular crossroads where I had to, there was a man in my life that I spent way too much time trying to convince him that I was the prize. When really I had to spend that time convincing myself that I was the prize. And so I had to choose between whether or not I wanted to keep chasing him so that I could marry and have children, or if I wanted to be open to a woman that I had met, and what the possibilities of that relationship would be. And in taking back or reclaiming not just a sense of self, but a sense of sexual authenticity, romantic authenticity, I decided, you know what, I'm going to pursue this relationship with this woman. And I knew that in pursuing that relationship, that I would lose some other things, but I wouldn't lose myself. And I wouldn't lose my relationship with God because of what others had said. And so I've been in a very loving relationship for the last 5 years and married for almost 2 of those years. And I am grateful for that.
Thank you, Tajay. Sean, you're up, buddy.
Yeah, am I still echoing? No, I sorted it out. Awesome. Tech support needed a little tech support today. And for me on this topic, I really was looking at the concept of joy. When I was growing up, we didn't have the best of things or things in general. And there was a lot of trauma between what my parents had already been through, what, poverty had led them through. And there was a sense that like you can laugh at yourself, but it wasn't true joy, if you know what I mean. It was more of a humor to kind of, the old saying my grandma used to use was, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. And it was that kind of humor. It wasn't just a general in your soul, bottom of your gut, all through your whole body joy, where you actually could feel that everything was okay, regardless of what was going on, and that there was a happiness that you could feel that actually resonated in your body. That kind of joy, that like eat good pizza, have a really bad TV show kind of joy, is really the best way I think I can describe it. That stuff wasn't there, and often it wasn't sought out. It wasn't something we were taught that you could have. Everything in our life growing up was that you meet the right perception, that you meet all of the expectations that are in front of you, and that people are able to see you in the light that our family legacy should be under. That was the type of joy that really wasn't even a joy. It was just we're gonna live life, and we're just gonna keep on keeping on, is kind of the sense of things. And my mom used to say all the time, it is what it is. And I gotta tell you, I hate that phrase now. I absolutely cannot stand it when I hear people say it. Sometimes people will say it at my work, at my regular work, and I have to like just turn off my video for a second and just gather myself, because it's a settling. It was a way to just say, not only do I not have control, but I'm not going to take any control, and I'm not going to deal with things that I could be dealing with. And I'm not going to look at my own personhood to see how I could better live to the fullest of life. And that really changed for me in the last few years. And to think about all the time that I've been in things like therapy, and I went through seminary too, and Carson beat me by a year. She did it in 6, it took me 7 to really finish it all. And it really has taken me quite a bit of time to be able to step back and say, oh, you know what, I don't have to get through all of these things. My expectations don't have to be the level of like a deity. They could be human level. They can be at a human place. I can pick things that are that serve me, that serve my well-being, that take care of this vessel that I have. That type of joy was not presented to us. It was and is what it is. And I don't think it has to be what it is. I think it can be whatever makes us content with the life that we're living, whatever leads us to this path of actually being able to sit at the end of the day and go, goodness, everything feels so aligned. And I'll just end with, we were asked a few weeks ago for our upcoming like company retreat at my job, to provide like a theme song that we would pick for ourselves, for that like spoke to where we were at. And the one I picked was It's About Damn Time by Lizzo, because I had gotten to this place where I was like, it's about damn time that we're having a joyful life. It's about damn time that we feel good about what we're doing. It's about damn time that we're here and we're able to do the things that we're able to do now. Everything that has been and could have been has led us to where we are. And there's so much joy and love in this space for me.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you all for your wisdom and your courage and your vulnerability to share your stories with us. So now we want to open it up for questions that you all may have in the grand scheme of all that you've heard or what that may have sparked for you. And you can either write it in the chat and we'll say it out loud, or you can say it out loud yourself.
I have a question I would like to pose to anyone who'd be willing to answer.
Okay, Jen.
So before asking my question, I want to acknowledge the vulnerability in the space that each one of you tapped into, to journey from places of harm to like how you recovered and landed in a place of wholeness, or how you are still journeying into that place of wholeness, and acknowledge that space. So thank you for sharing. I think my question becomes, what would you either say to your younger self to get you to your place of wholeness faster? Or what would you say to someone still journeying to that place of wholeness to help support them in getting there?
That's a great questions, Jen. Thank you. Anybody want to jump in?
Power and control. So much of what I hear in my story and in some of the other stories, people who are unhappy and who are unwhole in their own lives, wanting to exert power and control over the lives of other people. And how manipulative and seductive it can be. That we think they know, especially, you know, when we're children and socialized in particular ways, we think that the socializers, whether they're parents or spiritual community or teachers or something on television or what, we think that's it. And so power and control is a real, if I had known, my younger self had understood that power and control dynamic that was operating, and that there's something possible for my life beyond that tiny box of power and control, and that I would be safe outside of that box, that I would be well. I had no clue. I thought the world would end if I broke out of the power and control boxes of my family, of my religion. And even to the extent, as in my own story, even to the extent, if God was inviting me outside of that, I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Because I had been so seduced by the environments in which I grew up, and my younger self really could not imagine a world bigger than what had been constructed for me by these power and control dynamics. Again, constructed by people who, by and large, did not know wholeness and did not know joy and did not know the profound experience of freedom and liberation in their own lives. And they wanted me to shrink to something that they thought was, you know, they could maneuver and manipulate. And my younger self, if I were able to speak, well, and I talk to my younger self all the time, but you know, that's one of the things. I said, baby, the world is so big and ready for you. So that's I could talk on that forever, but I really want to hear other folks' voices on that.
Thank you, Carrie. Anybody else on the panel? I have something to share, but let y'all talk first.
I would just echo the reminder, the thing that I'm constantly having to practice in my mind is realizing and accepting that my parents just didn't know what they didn't know. And being gracious towards, the things that they never experienced. They didn't have a particular worldview or exposure. And so just being reminding my younger self that these are also younger people who don't know what they're doing. And yeah, and also I would also tell my younger self that that we are born with spiritual authority, and that because we are children of God, and I want to substitute God for whatever it is you believe in, that we have a divine spiritual being, and we're born with that authority. And so learning that thing, that inner altar within us, is something that really is no one else's business, and to cultivate that very early on, that inner relationship.
Thank you, Tizay. Sean or
I would
Zori?
like to, yeah, I would like to add something. I like to remind my younger self that we're a team and that she can trust me, that we're not in the place that we were before. And that we've come this far, and that we have to work through this together. And one of the things I like to really stress a lot is the trust. You can trust me. I love you dearly. We've come this far, and we're going to continue going further. And I need you to help me to move forward and continue healing. That this is not just a me, this is an us. This is something that we do together. And I like to provide my inner child the things that I was not given as a child. The love, the emotional nurturance, the time that my child wasn't provided with. And so that's what helps my little child work with me. And we're still working on that, right? And for the ones who are still working on themselves and still in that journey, don't give up, because you're in the right journey. And sometimes as an adult, because the healing never stops. It's like we can grow more and more. And one of the things I like to tell myself is, while I may not see, it's like blind faith, I like to trust myself, because one of the things that used to hinder my growth was the belief that I didn't have in myself to be able to make the changes that I needed in my life. And so I like to remind myself every time I'm doubting is to continue, even if I don't believe it at the moment. I may not see it, I may not see it. It's like faith, it's like pour into the faith and starve your doubts, feed your faith and starve your doubts. Because for me, I need to tell myself, I trust you. I need to hear that from myself. Other people, fine. But what's most important, that if I'm continuing my journey, I need to know that I'm going to trust myself. I can trust me in this process, and that you're not alone, and you're not alone in the process, that there's many of us doing this work, and it's for our well-being.
Thanks, Zori. Sean, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add one quick thing that I was actually thinking about this earlier today around, what would I say to younger me? And I think there's a phrase my grandma used to use all the time, which was, it all works out in the wash. And I think that's something I've been thinking about lately is that, at the end of the day, like, no matter what happened or what has happened, we're going to get where we're going. And to remember that we're gonna land where we need to be when we need to be there, and to trust that regardless of what we're thinking about or how the shoulda woulda couldas that we're getting ourselves into, that it's all gonna work out in the wash, and we're gonna find our way down that road, and we're gonna be where we need to be when we need to be there, and it's all gonna work out.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So I would add briefly 3 different little things. So the first one is growing up, like I had this internal voice, or the way that I thought, or the way that I maneuvered the world. And everything around me told me that that was wrong. Like everyone in my vicinity thought very differently. And so I took that in as there was something wrong with me. And it wasn't until I was in seminary that I realized, oh, I'm just wired differently than them. There's not something wrong with me. I'm just wired, like I just think differently, and I just move in the world, and I, like there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just wired differently. And thank God I'm wired differently. And then the second thing is, like, one of the other things that was profound for me in seminary was I was always like living my life and doing everything to please the people around me so that I could be accepted, especially my family of origin, and specifically my dad. And so like I was always facing this family and engaging with this really what was a wall because it never moved. Like I tried to go under it and over it and around it and all the things, and nothing ever worked. And to understand in seminary that I didn't have to, I could choose not to engage with this wall. I could simply turn around and engage with whatever's over here and stop beating my head up against this wall and putting all my time and energy into this. And so that was just like, whoa, and so I think it, part of it comes back to what Tijay was talking about, loving who you are. I think we all are who we are for a reason. And the more that you live into that fully, and it takes baby steps, especially for some of us that trauma and all kinds of other things are so ingrained, that it's about being okay with who you are and not thinking that there's something wrong with you, but just thinking, and in the living more fully into who you are authentically are. Like I have found that you find your tribe of people, because I always felt like I didn't fit in anywhere, and engaging and walking into, as best you can in any given moment, walking and trying to live into that authentic self, you stumble upon your tribe and the people who will accept you and love you for exactly who you are at any given moment. I mean, at seminary, I felt like I was changing who I was. Like the core of me wasn't changing, but I didn't know who the core of me was. So I felt like I was a different person every minute of the day because I was dealing with so much trauma and stuff. And so, yeah, that would be my thing. Yeah. So thank you for those questions, Jen. So if you want to come back and join us next month, we'll have our next panel on July 19th, same bat time, same bat channel. And this one will be about religious trauma and how that keeps us stuck in other places. And if you haven't already registered, the bit.ly link is right there. Sean, can you also put that in the chat, please? And you may have already registered for that when you registered, because you could just choose which ones you were interested in. But either way, if you want to do that, feel free. And then the last one, Sean, please. Yep. So we are all here for you. If you have questions, or I know you said you were kind of processing a lot of things, Justine. And so if there's questions later on that you have for any of us, you can email us at carson@drcarriejackson.com. And if you want to visit Excellent Way on the website, it is excellentway.life, not .com or .org, but .life. And then there's our social media links as well. So follow us that way if you want to as well. So that's all we have for you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us and for your wisdom and questions that you shared as well.